Okay, folks, welcome to My Life with Robert Buns. I'm in Mauchline. My friend and colleague Jim Thompson's in Kilmarnock. How are you doing, Jim?
Doing great, Douglas, thank you.
This week we've got all the way from Berwick-upon-Tweed, we've got Ian Buick.
Good evening, or afternoon, I should say.
Hi, Ian. Ian's a real Kent face around the Buns Supper circuit, and it's great that we've got someone else from the East Coast coming to join us today. How's things down your way today, Ian?
Very lovely sunny weather, keeping very quiet. Not many people moving about because of COVID, but we'll survive.
Good. Well, Ian, we'll just start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
Well, this will come as a wee bit of shock to you, but I was born in the West, but not the west of Scotland. There's a place you probably have heard of called Glastonbury.
All right.
Way down in the West Country. Now, the reason that happened was because of the Second World War. My father joined up at Dundee, and they sent him across in the British Expeditionary Force. Unfortunately, you know what happened to them. They all had to fall back to Dunkirk and escape back across the Channel again. So he managed to escape. The first wee boat he got on got swamped by a Stuka bomb. And then he managed to get out again to a Royal Navy ship, got up the scrambling net, flopped on the deck, and this petty officer came up to him and said, "Hello, Dave, what are you doing here?" As somebody who knew for Dundee. My father had been a wee bit smashed about the mouth at Dunkirk, and the petty officer said to him, "Have you got your mess tin on you?" He said, "Yes." "Give us it here, put a large measure of Navy neaters in it," which he immediately swallowed and wished he hadn't because it got into all the cuts in his mouth. So after he got to Dover, they sent him and the rest of his regiment to Glastonbury. And he hadn't been there very long. And one Sunday he was sitting on a wall, and this family took pity on him and invited him in for Sunday dinner. It was said afterwards they didn't quite know what he was saying, because although he was Dundee, he was brought up in farms to the northeast of Dundee, and he actually sounded more like an Aberdonian. So they took him in. There was two young ladies in the family, one unmarried and one a young widow, and he fell for the young widow. So after he came back from the war in 45, after being through the desert in Sicily and Italy, etc., he got married. So in 1946, Armistice Sunday, I came along. So that's how I came to be down there. My mother, she worked for Bailey's, the sports goods manufacturer. She was a clerk there. And there was a ready job waiting for my father there when he came back from the war. So there he was working, making things like tennis rackets and cricket bats and things like that. But then there was a wee bit of a tragedy in Scotland. The commercial traveller for the whole of Scotland got in a car crash and broke his neck.
Oh dear.
So the boss came running in and said, "Hey Dave, do you fancy going back to Scotland?" Well, I was still in my pram then, so I was up and back up to Dundee. Stayed with my granny. And then we moved to another tenement in Dundee. There's actually somewhere a letter from my auntie, the other girl in the family, to my mother and saying, "How are you getting on up in Dundee?" And my mother wrote back and said, "Oh, not bad, but there's nowhere for Ian to play apart from on the roof." When I was in my sort of pre-teens, I still used to go and visit my cousin John in Dundee, and we still used to go on the roof and play. And we used to come back as black as ace of spades with a suit, no Clean Air Act then. So then my mother, I think it was her anyway, decided better country life would be better for me to be brought up in. So we moved to a wee village called Dunning in Perthshire. And that's where I started all my schooling. Went to the wee school, the big school. That's the primary 1 to 2, and then 3 to 7. And it was at the big school actually that I got my Buns certificate. First came across Buns there, the school competition, which I happened to win. That was 1958. I've still got that in the wall down in the hallway. And after that, I went to the secondary school at Ochterarder. Sat behind a young lady there who's downstairs making mincemeat for next year. That was Janet Mackenzie. So I've known her for quite a wee while. Didn't do much Buns at school. I can remember Maggie Johnson, the English teacher, doing a bit of Tam O'Shanter, but that's about the only time I can remember it being mentioned at secondary school. Just shame, really. Maggie used to hate me. She used to take an essay off me and say, "Thank you very much, Ian, for that essay. I shall now deduct 20% for writing and spelling," before she even looked at it.
Oh, dear.
What I didn't know then was I'm actually dyslexic.
All right.
It's not a word that ever came up in the school in those days. Quite a modern thing, really. Hence, I failed my English O grade, or O level as it was then. But that's another wee bit story that comes later, I think. Yes.
Okay.
So,
and what happened after school?
well, after school, shall we say the school was a type of school that the boys went in engineering and the girls went into offices. So I started off as an apprentice millwright in Jack Olden's in Perth, which I actually quite enjoyed. I was 15 when I left school, and had a week's holiday, turned up at the firm to work, and a week later they said, "Have you got a case? Get it packed. You're going off with a squad." And we went all over from the north of Scotland down as far as Oxford, building grain dryers.
Oh, wow.
It was a good education for a 15-year-old laddie.
Uh-huh.
Although I must admit, I had to sit outside the pub when they brought the beer out to me rather than going into the pub. That was a good life.
Yeah.
But I did that for almost a couple of years, I suppose. But it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to get some more educational qualifications, and I fancied something to do with medicine. So the day after Kennedy was assassinated, I turned up at the recruiting office in Dundee to join the Royal Navy.
Right.
Which I did as a sick berth attendant, as they called it then.
Uh-huh.
My intention was to train as a sick berth attendant, take some more O grades, and then do X-ray. But the best laid schemes are mice and men going after glee. I was working on the wards as a nurse. Would you believe a 17-year-old doing nights on a 28-bed ward by myself? Wouldn't do it nowadays.
No.
I see here or there. One day, a friend of mine said, one Wednesday, he said, "I'm thinking of joining the submarine service. They're wanting medical technicians for the new specialization." "Ah, good," says I. "That sounds like a reasonable idea." That afternoon, I got a call to go up in front of a selection board. The next day, I went up front of another selection board. And then the Friday, I was in Dolphin doing my submarine training. So, open.
And was that at Fastlane?
No, that was at Dolphin, at Gosport.
All right.
Did my submarine training. Quite thoroughly enjoyed that. Especially enjoyed the escape tank. I don't know if anybody's ever seen the escape tank.
Yeah.
It's 100 foot of water.
I can't imagine that you could enjoy it.
Oh, great fun. Really enjoyed it. And then when I finished that, I did my further training at the Institute of Naval Medicine for the health physics specialization. And then it was into the submarine service, starting off with the Warspite, which was getting built at Brown and Furness. And then I think I was on all the bombers and quite a few of the hunter killers.
Right.
So, and I did 23 years at that, coming out as a chief petty officer.
Uh-huh.
And I retired at 40. And after that, well, actually my last few years in the Navy was spent with the Navy social work department. I used to run the Sailors and Families Advice Bureau at Fars Lane.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So I had a sort of foot in both camps, social work and medical. And when I came out, I walked straight into a job as a deputy manager of a home for the elderly in the Borders.
Oh, very good.
So I kept doing that until I was 55 and then said, to hell with this. I've worked enough and I've retired at 55.
Excellent.
Well, it got to the case that I said to my wife, why am I putting in all these hours? The mortgage is paid. The kids are through university. I don't need the money.
Yeah.
So I got my little calculator out and said, right, that's it.
Good for you. Good for you. And it's a kind of strange question when you're talking about submarines, but did you see many countries of the world when you were traveling?
Yes, Germany, America, Gibraltar, Mauritius, Singapore, underneath Atlantic a lot. In fact, I almost didn't get married because of a trip. I was getting married on the 19th of March, 1969. And in the end of February, they said, you're going to America. And I did say, I had to phone my wife to be and say, stop all the arrangements. I might not be there. So I did say to them, look, my fiance is getting married on the 19th of March. I would quite like to be there. So that's what I managed to get off that trip.
Good for you.
And then straight after my honeymoon, I went away on a bomber for 3 months. So my wife went back to her family.
Uh-huh.
I went to sea, and then we set up home in Helensburgh when I got back. So strange life, the Navy, isn't it?
Yeah. And having retired early, though, I mean, you from what I see on Facebook, you've got plenty of hobbies with your gardening and your Scottish country dancing and such like.
Well, it's not country dancing; it's sequence dancing.
All right, sorry, I stand corrected or sit corrected.
But oh no, I have done some work since I retired as a film extra. I've been in umpteen Taggarts and Veras and commercials and you name it. Doesn't pay well, but it breaks up the year.
I always look out for you when I watch Vera.
All right. In fact, there was an old Vera came on about a week ago, and my wife and I sat down to watch it because I'd never actually seen this one. And halfway through, I thought, oh, I recognize that bill. Oh, there I am.
You're usually sitting in a truck or something like that.
There was a time when I was slightly younger. I was a policeman so many times I was wanting a police pension. Oh, I've been everything from man in bar, man in betting shop, gangsters heavy, a nurse, a doctor, you name it.
Very good.
I've even been a priest.
Well, on your Facebook, the two things that I was really impressed with is, first of all, the quality of your veg and the pictures you show of the veg or the fruit that you picked ready for Sunday dinner or something like that.
Well, it's a hobby that's got something at the end of it, isn't it? my wife's just downstairs doing apples for the mincemeat that's come out the garden. So
very good. And the other thing that impressed me was during COVID, the fact that now I don't know what this was because you were being romantic, but the fact that you booked a hall just so that your wife and yourself could have a dance?
Well, I wouldn't say it's romantic, but it's exercise. No, if the brain gets a bit fogged, you can't remember all the dances if you don't keep it up. So it just keeps us going. We do 2 sessions a week, once in the living room and once in this hall. And it's good fun.
Good for you.
Keeps you active. But I don't know when it's going to start up again. It's going to be many, many months yet, I think.
Well, it's the same with Buns suppers, I imagine. And before we got into that, how about giving your wife a mention, and you talked about your family as well?
Well, I say my wife was Janet McKenzie in my class at school. And I've got 2 kids, Imogen and Gavin. And it's frightening how old they're getting now. I never thought I'd have children that age.
Tell us about it.
Oh, God. My daughter, God, it's only 2 years until she's 50. Imagine that.
I'm not sure she's going to want to hear that
No.
on broadcast.
Oh, I don't think I'll tell her I'm doing this. It's all right.
Anyway, having talked about yourself and your family and your hobbies and interests and such like, we'll now get you talking about Buns, and I'll pass over to Jim to start the discussion on that.
Okay, cheers.
Ian, obviously you started at school, as many of us did. Where did you progress through Buns from there?
After school, nothing. I was too busy working, then in the Navy. It just never came up until it must have been about this time of year in 1971. I was an instructor up at the Admiralty Reactor Test Establishment, Vulcan, at Dounreay. And the coxswain came into my office and he says, "Ian, we're having a Buns supper. You're Jockinese, you're addressing the haggis." Now, this was a big Buns supper with all the high hegians of Caithness going to be there. There was going to be more gold braid, I should say, lords, Lord Lieutenants, you name it, all going to be there. And I was going to do the haggis. There was one snag. I didn't know it. I'd never done it. I'd never seen it done. I didn't even have a Buns book. My wife had one. So between sort of now and the 25th of January, I had to do a quick learn of the address to a haggis. And it went down very well, because I wasn't going to do it, reading it off a bit of paper. If I was going to do it, I was going to do it properly. So I did it, and it went down very well. But that Buns supper was actually memorable for me in 2 other ways. One, and I've suppose people have come across this at Buns suppers before, a certain warrant officer's wife was very interested in getting her hand on what was underneath my kilt. I had to keep moving very, very fast because I didn't think it was very good to get her getting her hands on that. But secondly, I saw Tam O'Shanter performed for the first time. I don't say recited, because I'd heard it recited at school, but performed. I don't know who the guy was, but it was a style I took up myself, where you move into the audience and actually talk to people direct. You bring them into the poem. And I thought, this is bloody good. So after that, I knew I was going to be moving back down to Fars Lane again. I bought a house. So for a few months, I was commuting between Thurso and Fars Lane. Something to do in the train, learn Tam O'Shanter. And that's what I did on the Thurso to Glasgow train over many trips. And Tam O'Shanter actually came in very handy for me later on. I mentioned earlier on, I'm kind of dyslexic. Well, up in Thurso, I'd gone to night classes to do the O-level. And I'd had so many teachers tell me I couldn't do it. And this young lass was the teacher, and I'd been in the class for about 3-4 weeks. And she said, you shouldn't be in this class. I thought, oh, God, here's somebody else going to tell me I can't do English. She said, no, you should be doing higher. Oh. Unfortunately, the higher class was fully booked up. So I did the O grade, passed it, which I was very chuffed with. So the next year, I was back at sea again. So I thought to myself, I'll enter through Dumbartonshire as an external candidate. So I took Robert Burns's poems, war poets, the works of Shakespeare, and past papers to sea with me. I didn't put a pen to paper until the day of the exam, which I sat somewhere under the Mediterranean, and I passed it. And I used Tam O'Shanter as one of my poems.
Very good.
Oh, I was ever so chuffed. So it's come in handy for me, Burns. And we did the odd bit of supper on board the submarine, but it wasn't until sort of after that trip I started get into suppers with the Helmsburg Wine Circle and things like that.
But before you tell us about that, would this be an opportunity for a wee bit of poetry?
If you want. All right. I'll give you The Good Wife of Walkup House. Now,
Excellent.
That one I managed to win a competition at Edinburgh many years ago now. But also when the Commonwealth Games was held in Scotland, as the torch or whatever it was came over the border at Coldstream, they had me reciting it. The Coldstream Buns Club had me reciting it to the crowds. It was quite frightening to see myself on a huge screen. And I mean, huge, 20 foot by 10 foot or whatever. Most disconcerting, but The Good Wife of Walkup House. Good wife, I mind it weel in early date, when I was beardless, young and blate, and first could thresh the barn, or hurry yoking at the pleugh, although for faughten sair anew, yet unca proud to learn. When first among the yellow corn, a man I reckoned was, and wi' the lave ilk merry morn could rank my rinked lass, still shearing and clearing, the tither stook it raw, with clavers and havers, wearing the day awa. And then, I wish. I mind its power, I wish that to my latest hour shall strongly heave my breast, aye, for poor old Scotland's sake, some useful plan, or book could make, or sing a sang at least. The rough burr thistle spreading wide among the bearded beer. I turned the weeder clips aside, and spared the symbol dear. No nation, no station, my envy e'er could raise. A Scot still, but blot still, I knew nae higher praise. But still, the elements a sang, and formless jumble, right or wrang, while floated in my brain, till on that hearst, I said before, my partner in the merry corps, she roused the forming strain. I see her yet, the sonsie queen, that lighted up my jingle, her witching smile, her pocket een, that gart my heartstrings tingle. I fired, inspired, at every kindling keek, but bashing and dashing, I feared I to speak. Hail to the sex, ilk good chiel says, we merry dance on winter days, and we to share in common the gust of joy, the balm of woe, the soul of life, the heavens below us, rapture-giving woman. Ye surly sumps, what I hate the name, be mindful o' your mither. She honest women may think shame that ye're connected we're, your waymen, your nae men that slight the lovely dears, to shame ye, disclaim ye, ilk honest Birkie swears. For you, no bread to bar nor buyer, that sweetly tune the Scottish lyre. Thanks to you for your line, the marrow played you kindly spare, by me would gratefully beware, So please me to the nine. I'd be mair vaunty o my hap, just hanging on my kirtle, than ony ermine ever lap, or proud imperial purple. Farewell then. Lang hail then, and plenty be your fall. May losses and crosses ne'er at your Hallen caw. And that's it.
Well done, Ian. I was there the day you did that in the audience, and I was also, I think the first time I ever met you was at the Laprate competition in Muirkirk.
Oh, possibly.
Are there any of these competitions that you've entered that you've not won?
Tam O'Shanter competition.
You
I
didn't win?
only got third in that.
Well, that surprises me. I haven't heard you do Tam O'Shanter, I've got to say.
Well, I was told actually before I went into the competition that my style of Tam O'Shanter doesn't really work for that competition. They like it a bit. I'm quite exuberant doing it, and I like to get the audience involved, whereas they like it sort of done a wee bit more straight as a tale. But I still got third, so that's enough, I suppose.
Well done. You can't win them all.
No. Although I say all these competitions are very, very subjective, aren't they?
Yeah.
Depends who the judge is. I've come away from some thought I've done very, very well, got nowhere.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's why with the Laprate competition, I never get involved in judging. We always brought in independent judges because I didn't want their job ever.
Yes, I've had to judge. But it's not a job I like. You're liked by one person and hated by everybody else. What does he ken?
But you must have been to an awful lot of Buns suppers over the years, given your quality as a...
I did add it up once, and it runs into hundreds.
Well, give us a few highlights from your Buns supper career.
Highlights, God. It's a bit hard to say highlights. Some of them have been very, very good. But I must say, as a bit of a hobby horse of mine, some of them, the organizers, need a boot up the proverbial. The number of times I'm asked, can you recite at my Bun supper? I say, yes, please, lovely. What can I do? Oh, can you do Tam O'Shanter and Holy Willie? What about all the other ones I know? Oh, no, we'll just do that. You know, there's a lot of people learn a lot of Burns's poems, and they're never ever asked to do them. Like the Whitadder one, club I belong to, which is cross border. You have your set program, but then it's thrown open to the audience. So anybody that wants to put in their party piece can. And you hear a lot more poems at that than you do at some others. I've been to some Burns suppers. They have been so staid and so wordy. The speeches, well, one I'm thinking of, I won't say which one. I think there was only 2 poems in the whole Burns supper. That was the Haggis and Tam O'Shanter. There was a couple of songs, and everything else was speeches.
I can remember you, Ian, telling me about a supper. I don't know whether this was a supper that you would like to have or a supper that you go to where there were no speeches and the whole supper was poetry and song.
Oh, I've been to some like that, yes. Well, the local U3A has a little Burns supper. The mortal memory to Robert Burns takes about 1 minute. The Toast of Lassies takes just a couple of minutes, and everything else is music, reciting, laughter. You know, it's a joyous kind of Burns supper to go to.
Yeah.
I know I was given the mortal memory at one Burns supper. And I think they gave me 20 minutes. Ended 20 minutes on the dot, exactly what they asked. Then a guy got up to do the toast of the town. He went on for about 40 minutes. Oh dear.
Yeah.
If burn suppers are going to carry on, some of them are going to have to lighten up a bit, in my opinion. Maybe not everybody agrees, because I'm not I'm a Burns enthusiast. I'm not one of your intelligentsia that has every minute fact. So,
how about the clubs that you're involved with? Do you take office with any of these clubs?
yes, I've been chair of the Whitharder Club, president of the St Andrews Club in Berwick. I've been president of the Borders Association of Burns Clubs. That's the only ones I've actually taken office in, because there aren't that many Burns clubs in the area. Most of the Burns suppers in our area here are organised by clubs, churches, sports. The bowling club, for instance, they all have Burns suppers, but they're not strictly run by a Burns club.
Currently, what's your involvement in terms of the Burns movement?
Well, I'm still on the committee of the Whitharder Burns Club, and a member of Coldstream Burns Club. I'm not on the Borders Association now, because my time was actually getting a bit short, and I'd been on there for quite a few years. And in fact, I was president when we had the kids competition down here at Peebles. Oh, sorry, the singing competition was at Peebles. The reciting, etc., was at Duns, the new high school they had there. We were some of the first people to use it. In fact, it was still getting built when we actually arranged it there, and it was going to be touch and go whether it was going to be finished in time.
Ian, as far as I'm aware, you're mainly known for your recitations. Is there any other aspects of Burns or characters within the Burns story that you've got a particular interest in?
No, I'm just a general reciter. I like some a broad range of the poems. I can't sing. Back in my school days, I was a singer before the voice broke, but after the voice broke, terrible. Can't hold a note. And I find Burns's, or the music to Burns's songs, quite difficult. You know, where excuse me, the verse is at one key, then you go to the chorus and it goes up here, and I just can't do it. So the communal singing, I tend to sing the verse and ignore the chorus.
Well, we won't ask you to sing, but we'll hopefully get you to give us another recitation before we're finished. Jim, is there anything else we want to talk to you about, Jim?
Well, the only question that's live in my mind at the moment really is, I mean, I've heard you reciting an awful lot of poems, Ian, over the years, but what's your favourite Burns poem to recite?
Well, I must admit, I do like Tam O'Shanter, and I also like the Holy Fair. It's funny, where I was saying earlier on, I saw this guy up in Thurso perform Tam O'Shanter as opposed to recite it. With the Holy Fair, I was at Peebles at a Burns supper, and on the same sort of entertainment list was a lady opera singer, and I got up and did the Holy Fair. And when I sat down, she said, "You acted that?" I said, "Yes. You're an opera singer. When you go onto stage with an opera, you don't sing it. You act it as well as you sing it." And that's I've seen people do Tam O'Shanter, and all praise to them. They've remembered all the words, but delivered in a monotone. Excuse me. I've got a frog in my throat. I think the audience is there to get entertained by getting into whether the Holy Fair or even Tam O'Shanter. Get in among the audience, right close up, which you can't do now with the COVID, of course. Get right close up, speak to them directly. The only snag with doing that is, Jim, I come up to you and I'll look you straight in the eye and actually talk to you. Some people actually talk back in the middle of the poem.
That's called audience engagement.
God, aye. They're like, oh, for Pete's sake, picking somebody's time, they say, oh, yes, you're right there. Oh, I'm a hell of a guy at the booze. Oh, I'm terrible on a Saturday night. Shut up.
Goodness
It
sake.
all adds to the fun.
Yeah.
I was at a supper in Greenlaw last year, and they'd actually never seen Tam done that way. And there happened to be a friend of mine, a guy I knew in the audience, him and his wife, and they were the most beautiful foil to Tam O'Shanter and Kate. And the audience just went daft with it. Poor old Eddie just ended up on the floor as I'm telling him off, But see, you've got to do that for the audiences. If you have a Buns supper, it's all stayed, all too specified, it's not as good.
Well, the beauty of Buns is that he lends himself to all sorts of situations. I mean, it's great that you very rarely go to two Buns suppers that are alike. I mean, in New Covenant, we have our own style of Buns suppers, which seems to work really well, and there's a lot of humour in it, and everybody seems to enjoy that.
Well, that's the way. You've got to get people involved, give them a laugh, get them so they'll say something about it the next day. Hopefully, not too derogatory.
No, the joy in New Covenant for me is I've sat there for many years now, and I don't know how many times I've heard a poem I didn't even know Buns had written.
Aye. And
that's what makes the difference for me. It's just completely different.
Mm-hmm. I would say that he's got a whole blooming book of poems, and you don't hear them. It's terrible in a way. I go back to my previous point with the organisers. You give them a choice and say, oh, well, just have Tam O'Shanter and Holy Willie. Same old. I'll tell you what I did at it was actually a Masonic one up in Edinburgh 1 year. I made a list of about, we'll say 8 poems. I said, yes, I'll do Tam O'Shanter and Holy Willie, but it's going to be my choice for a third one. And it was like a voting list. I put it around the audience. Tick the poem you'd like to hear. And I think the one that won it was a Dress of Beelzebub. Because, as some of them said, I'd never heard of that one, let alone heard anybody do it. Can you do that one?
Very good. Well, you realise, Ian, that you've set yourself up here. We're getting close to the end of our time, and we're going to be asking you to do another poem. So, your choice is quite important here now.
Is it? Oh, what the hell will I do? Actually, a wee short poem that I actually put online at Armistice, the Song of Death. You know that one, Jim?
I know it. I've never heard it recited though.
Aye. It's a wee bit controversial in a way, because it mentions coward and slave in the same sentence, you know. But I've been doing a lot of family history, especially this year because I've had the time. And later on in the second verse, it says, "There strikes the dull peasant, he sinks in the dark, nor saves in the wreck of a name. Thou strikes the young hero, a glorious mark, he falls in the blaze of his fame." I don't actually agree with that now, because you know when you do family history, they say everybody is related to the royal family, and I went rubbish. And I started off, and I got a whole load of people who are ploughmen, farm servants, farmers, you name it. But then I got 3 lines. I actually went into the big families of Scotland. And going back through, take Flodden for instance, I've found about 30 of my ancestors who died at Flodden. But they're only known because they were in the big families. And the history of the big families are written down. Jimmy McIntyre for a farm wouldn't be mentioned. But Sir James McIntyre, for instance, would be mentioned. So the dull peasants that sinks in the dark, that's not really there.
Yeah.
The only reason the heroes are there, in my opinion now, is because they happen to belong to a family that had a history written down.
Yeah.
So it's a strange, really.
Yeah, so it sure is.
But could do that one, I suppose.
That would be good. That would be a good one to finish us off with, given that you've given us a bit of the background and about your research and into your family tree.
Oh God, you name the battle in Scotland, and the chances are a member of my family was there.
So does that mean that your family are troublemakers?
No, it's just a done thing in those days. I'll give you a wee fact. About 5 different lines in my family go back to somebody called Robert the Bruce. See, he's about my 19th or 20th great grandfather, depending on which line you take. Everybody knows the story about before the battle, a young Norman knight, Henry de Bohun, saw Robert Bruce riding up and down in front of his troops and thought, I'll have him, and charged. And Robert Bruce basically split his skull wide open. We acted that out at school, with Robert Lyons as Robert the Bruce and Henry Hoy as Henry de Bohun. It's only in the last, say, 3 weeks that I've found that I'm actually related to the de Bohuns.
Oh.
My direct line, would you believe, I don't like to admit it, married the youngest daughter of somebody called Edward of England.
Oh, goodness sake.
And one of his nephews was Henry de Bohun, who got his head split open by Bruce. So you got 2 sides of the same family coming
There you go.
And there was also with the Song of Death, it mentions the slaves.
Yep.
My family hit it from both sides. The English side of my family, some of them were in the Duke of Marlborough's army when they took on, who was it, James the 7th and 2nd, was it? Aye, something like that. And they got thoroughly beaten at Sedgemoor. And those that weren't killed in the battlefield or hung by Judge Jeffreys were basically sold as slaves to the West Indies.
Goodness sake.
But on the other side, family from Inverness, would you believe, had a plantation, which they named after their estate in Inverness. It's what was done in those days.
Yeah, yeah.
It's in the news so much nowadays.
Yeah. Very much so.
History.
Anyway, having given us that background, are you going to finish us off with this, with the poem?
Right. Well, see, the background of the poem is it's sunset on the battlefield. A Scottish soldier is lying, dying, and he looks up at the sun, and it's the last sunset he'll ever see, and he sings the song of death. Farewell, thou fair day, thy green earth and ye skies, now gay with the broad setting sun. Farewell, loves and friendships, ye dear tender ties, our race of existence is run. Thou grim king of terrors, thou life's gloomy foe, go frighten the coward and slave, go teach him to tremble, fell tyrant. But no terrors hast thou to the brave. Thou strikes the dull peasant, he sinks in the dark, nor saves e'en the wreck of a name. Thou strikes the young hero, a glorious mark, he falls in the blaze of his fame. In the field of proud honour, our swords in our hands, our king and our country to save, while victory shines on life's last ebbing sands. Oh, who would not die with the brave? There we go.
Well done, Ian.
Funny, that's a beautiful poem that. I heard you do it once before. It really is lovely.
Well, that's what I say to myself at Armistice time.
Yeah, no, very, very good. So it really just leaves me to say thank you very much to you for giving us your time this afternoon. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Well, it's something different. It is. I hope you cut all the bits where I've stumbled and.
We'll do a wee bit of editing, but we don't do too much. It was very enjoyable, and I just want to say thank you very much for giving us your time.
No bother.
So cheers just now, Ian.
Cheers.